Ben, this is probably holds true for the entire executive team. I don't know if they've ever really been classically trained in leadership competencies and leadership methodologies. I just think they're hardworking people. So I do think from a leadership style, at least my experience was, hey, Mike, here's our targets. Here's what we need to accomplish. I'll stay involved and we'll stay in touch as much as you want to, but you're kind of doing your thing. Versus driving proactively a leadership structure.
Can you give me, it's a really interesting comment, can you think of or give me any examples of the kind of thing that, I'm sorry, I'm coughing, I've got the start of a cold, it's rubbish, the kind of thing that, you were bringing that you thought might have been new to Ben's experience in that sense?
So I was in a leadership meeting, and this is, I would probably call it 2 down from Eric. So probably Ben's direct reports and the other leaders in implementation and other departments, and probably 1 layer down. So there's probably about, I want to say about 40 so people in the room of their leadership team. At that point, don't know if they've corrected this, but at that point there was a lot of internal frustration of, who are we? What are we trying to accomplish? What is our message to the marketplace? And so this was kind of a little bit more of around meta message and what we stand for. And I know the organization, Global Forces, in the reward and recognition space, and it's all. And Eric wrote a book which I really loved around the thank you culture and driving engagement. But what does Global Force, how is Global Force going to win? Are they going to win through a service model? Are they going to win through a technology model, operational excellence? How are we going to really, what's the message and value propositions? And so Ben's like, hey, what are you guys talking about? You guys know what our marching orders, you know what we stand for. We want to be a $1 billion organization. And
but that's almost like the goal right at the very right-hand side of the page rather than all the steps in between the middle. Is that?
Well, that, and by the way, that's not a go-to-market message. I mean, we want to be a $1 billion organization. So, and so I'm sitting there as a new guy, not really talking. I go, and I finally chimed in, and I go, Ben, I know I'm the new guy here, but I don't believe $1 billion is a go-to-market message. It's you're either going to be operationally excellent, you're either going to be, you're going to kill them through customer service, or you're going to be the lowest price. So that's kind of, I think, what the team is trying to understand. What are we? Are we going to be customer-centric? Are we going to be price-centric? Or are we going to be operationally excellent? And he was kind of frustrated that people weren't getting on the billion-dollar message. And I go, by the way, not only is that not a message to the external marketplace, not everybody in the organization has stock or any kind of shares, so they're not really interested in being a billion-dollar organization because it doesn't really impact them. And maybe not everybody wants to be a part of that high growth of an organization. So that message disconnect on tying in, who we are, what we stand for, and how that trickles down into the operational structure of the organization was very immature.
Now, do you think that was because, let's just thinking specifically about Ben here, because, those kind of go-to-market messages, sit squarely within a head of sales remit. Mm-hmm. Is that because he didn't appreciate that people might need a little bit more guidance, or was he expecting too much of, 2 layers down, or, what do you think was driving that absence?
It wasn't just it wasn't just the 2 layers down. It was everybody, and nobody had a clear message of alignment. There was an alignment, in my opinion. Now, you're asking again, by the way, these are all my opinions, right? So
absolutely. That's exactly what this conversation is about. It's a subjective viewpoint.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't mean it's right. Yep. Or real. I would say that it's not that he didn't have the capacity for it, but
CBS. It's a show that's in its final season, but The Big Bang Theory. And we say, well, it delivers this many. So you definitely want to buy in that time period. It's got the most type of viewers that you are trying to reach, Mr. Advertiser, whether you're selling consumer packaged goods, whatever you're selling. And the advertiser is totally agnostic as to how the viewer is watching that. When we're talking about television, they don't care how the signal is getting into the television viewer's home, whether it's coming via cable, whether it's coming because the person has a satellite dish, or because the person is getting the signal over the air, if it's one of the networks. It really doesn't matter to the advertiser at all. Now, the matter of television, if we get into the discussion of the pressures on local television and on television generally, in that there are fewer and fewer viewers watching on traditional television and they're watching on other devices, that is the part that is very relevant to the advertiser. They want to know, who the viewers that were formerly sitting on the couch and watching television, what are they watching now? They may still be watching television programming, but they may be watching it on their phone, or they may be watching it on their computer. And that's where the element of delivery becomes very important once you start to talk about the programming that's off television. Television programming not viewed on a television, which we call OTT, or over-the-top programming.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, Adam. So we'll come back to the advertiser in just a second. But to confirm, did you? I don't know if this is true, but Meredith did not sell spot cable, did they? Inventory?
Again, if the answer is yes, because if the viewer is receiving the let's say a viewer in Atlanta is watching the CBS station in Atlanta, and they're watching it because they're subscribing to Comcast cable. That's how the viewer is getting the signal. The answer is yes, because Meredith is selling its programming that happens to be carried on cable. So they are selling cable. They're selling all forms, regardless of the form of transmission to the home. It's the programming that the advertiser is buying, regardless of the method of delivery. And so the station is selling it, regardless of how the viewer is receiving the signal, the television signal, whether they're receiving it by cable, whether they're receiving it by satellite, or whether they're receiving it over the air via antenna.
Okay. Sounds
it would not be possible, for example, for Meredith to say, well, we're selling you, Mr. Advertiser, we'll sell you this spot, but we're only going to sell it to the people who are watching our station over the air, because they switched on the TV and they have like a television antenna on the roof and they're receiving it that way. The station is selling the programming regardless of how the viewer is connected to the programming. That's immaterial. So they're selling it across all platforms, all the traditional television platforms.
Okay, fair enough. So then let's talk a little bit about that customer base. Because so the way that our team has been approaching it is we think that there's essentially three categories of customers that are interested in local TV. You have your national advertisers like your Fords and your Mercedes-Benzes and your Walmarts. And then these folks may spend through their local affiliates, or they may have, their national, their national teams buy specific markets. You have your regional businesses, which are just essentially large accounts that may cover, that may be just the larger accounts in that specific DMA. And then, of course, you have small and medium businesses like your local restaurants. Do those categories and their respective definitions sound correct to you?
Well, I would put it to you this way. Just taking a step back, I mean, I'll just make a statement here that the bread and butter of local television ad sales, when we're talking about television commercials, again, regardless of how the signal is received, is the auto industry. I'll just make that statement bluntly, and the biggest part of that is the local auto industry. So you're right. I think that small and medium-sized business thing, like at the last part, the local level business is actually the most important when it comes to an individual television station, and generally it's the car business that is like the king. So I would say, but yeah, there are national, I agree with that to some extent. I mean, regional businesses, I don't know. It's more like national and local. I mean, I can't think of instances of regional business